Hello, welcome to The Wilderness by me. In this channel, we will be talking about ecological systems, ecology, the wilderness, animal patterns, and more. Today, we're going to be talking about the very controversial topic of wolves' importance on the ecosystem, specifically in the Rocky Mountains. First of all, let's define what the Rocky Mountain ecosystem is, where it is, and where wolves live in the U.S. Okay, so first we're going to start off here in the northern Cascade Range in Washington. We're going to count pretty much all western big mountain ranges as the Rocky Mountains, just for generalization ease. So it's basically going to look like that. Okay. Next, we're going to shade in our wolf-populated regions in the U.S. Alright, now that we've got our region shaded in, let's go in and explain those different ones. Okay, first we've got our red wolves in North Carolina, only on one peninsula, I forget the name, but there's basically only like 25 or 30 of them left in the whole U.S., and they're only there in North Carolina. These are some of the most endangered animals in the world, and yeah. Next, Minnesota, Michigan population. It's a pretty strong population up there, I'd say, but also kind of isolated from these ones, but they are connected in Canada. Remember that, because sometimes when we look at maps, we always think that these are two isolated regions, but we always forget about this area up here, which is Canada. If y'all don't know, you probably knew that. Next, we've got Yellowstone National Park area. One of the best areas for seeing wolves in the world. They've got around 100 usually in the park. Next, Colorado, recently introduced, kind of going down right now. Not a good place for wolves to be in terms of controversy, but yeah, they've got a small population going. They're already a small number in the state before the reintroduction, but now they've got the official reintroduction going. Down here, we've got the Mexican wolves. They're pretty interesting. Right, next, we've got our California wolves. These wolves are also getting kind of in the controversy in the news recently. Yeah, I think their numbers are going up pretty steadily. I believe somewhere in the 70s to 100 or so. Next, a region that I didn't really shade in is just kind of this area, Oregon and southern Washington, and I guess most of Washington in here too. They're kind of more shallower ghost populations, but they're still there. Not like real populations, I'd say, though. You can always argue that. And then of course we have the NCDE, North Continental Divide Ecosystem Area. That's one of the most important ones, which encompasses most Montana and Idaho in here, western Montana and the mountainous parts of Idaho. Really strong population, a lot of convergence in Canada too, and the same thing in with the northern Cascades region, but there are less wolves there, I would like to point out. Now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, but why do we need wolves anyways? Like, what are they good for? Like, and to answer that question, a lot. Alright, so this is how I'm going to show it. I have wolves at the bottom. This represents just a species of wolf, and we're going to continue drawing on top to show which animals are affected by wolves. So first of all, in the food chain, of course, starting with wolves eat what? They eat elk. That's going to be their main kind of diet, right? They're also going to eat other cervids, such as moose, deer, any deer you can think of, mule deer, white-tailed deer, anything like that. So now both of these things elk and other cervids both eat plants. And you might think, well, why are plants special? Here's the reason. Rivers. Well, how do plants and rivers relate? Plants are on the sides of rivers. Example. These represent aspen bushes and trees, all sorts of service berries and fescues, all up along the side of the river. Okay, don't judge my drawing, please. Basically, we've all heard of erosion, right? It's basically dirt from here is simply eroded into the river by the currents, and you think that makes a river dirty. Yes, it does. So, how does erosion slow down? Basically, these plants, here it is, have roots. These roots hold in the soil. So, think all this is soil. These roots are just kind of like holding it in like that. All right. So basically, the plants slow down this erosion into the river because their roots here are literally holding onto the soil from quickly draining into the river. This is an important principle to know because wolves. So let's relate this back to wolves. What do wolves eat? Elk. What do elk eat? Plants. So elk eat plants. So what? Well, basically, wolves. Let's go back to wolves. Without wolves in an ecosystem, no wolves, there's nothing to control the population of elk. What I mean by control is there's basically nothing to eat elk. So the elk population skyrockets because there's no predators to eat them. Well, less predators, in fact. So with more elk, because there's no wolves, what happens to the plants? Well, there gets to be so many elk that they're eating all the plants, right? So the plants go down with all these elk, right? And with less plants, remember, we have more erosion. Now, if there are wolves in an ecosystem, what happens? Why is it better? So basically, you got wolves. Big check mark. Wolves eat elk. And with elk, their numbers are more controlled because of the wolves, right? So the elk population goes more like this. So the elk, because there's less elk, and it's not just skyrocketing, there's more plants now that are by the river. And so in short, more wolves equals less elk equals more plants. Now more plants does what? We know erosion from before. And erosion, how does erosion affect an ecosystem? And how overall does this benefit humans? Like, why would we want this? All right, let's look at the differences of wolves versus no wolves in an ecosystem, in a river. So basically, no wolves, all the vegetation's gone pretty much. The river straightens out because of this erosion. The river's super muddy and gucky with all these different sediment in it that are eroding from the banks of the river because there's not enough plant roots to hold the soil in. So basically, what this affects, what this really does, is first of all, roads. There's a lot of roads in the Rocky Mountains right next to rivers. And it costs millions of dollars to upkeep these roads with erosion. So these rivers just keep eroding this, and the roads crumble away. So essentially, saying that putting wolves in an ecosystem can lower your road maintenance cost is crazy interesting. Next, because these rivers are just so muddy gucky, the fish are not gonna do well. Fish, specifically trout, which live in the Rocky Mountains, do not do well at all in muddy waters. It's just not good for them. And what does this do? 1, less fish for anglers, fishermen. 2, less fish for animals like eagles, bears, anything that eats fish, otters, anything like that. Next, we're gonna move on to if an ecosystem does have wolves. Big check mark. So you notice there's a lot more vegetation next to this river. The river's gonna be a lot more bluer, clearer, more animals around it. So basically what this is gonna do, there's gonna be more vegetation, more berries, more pine cones, which means there's gonna be more birds. Also, clearer waters, more fish, more bears, more bears. Bears, they spread berries because they eat a lot of berries in their poop. And that's gonna be positive, bringing even more berries all throughout the ecosystem. Next, it's gonna support things like otters, eagles, everything that eats fish like that. And also, it curves out this river and decreases the strength of the river even with close to the river vegetation, and also creates more fish for anglers and lowers road maintenance costs in the Rocky Mountains. Now, I would call that pretty dang cool, if you know what I'm saying. Saving road maintenance costs with literal wolves. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want more ecosystem information by me. See you later.